Hey guys, I'm the only one in here so far for our 1 o'clock webinar. It's going to be a fun one, so hopefully you check in soon. I like to open it up so that way I can make sure that anybody who checks in early can jump on. So we're starting in about 5 to 7 minutes, and you just let me know what you need if you have any questions and what I can do to help you. Oh, look, somebody's in. Welcome. Good afternoon, guys. Oh, it's coffee time for me. It's coffee time, so Brittany's here. Hey, Brittany, how you doing today? I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Very exciting. Shut up and listen. Lots of ways to learn how to pay attention to your clients and figure out what your clients' needs are. I will be recording the webinar, so I'll email out the recording. So if that's something, we all get distracted, right? I'm the worst when it comes to a webinar. I'm listening to a webinar while I'm working, while I'm doing other things. So if for whatever reason you miss something, you can either ask, pop it right into that chat box and ask, or I will email it over to you so that way you have it and you can watch it later. So it gives you lots of different options. If you're here, great. If not, then that's okay too. So I would love to hear from you. Make sure you use the chat box. This is my second webinar of the day today. The first one, they asked some really great questions all about how to sell better, close better, some things that maybe I hadn't planned on covering. So the chat box is your availability to ask me anything that you want to make sure that I touch on it and cover it. If you haven't followed us on social media yet, make sure you follow at Wedding Venue Map on both Instagram and Facebook. That's how you get invited to these great webinars and different events. For those who are joining, welcome. Getting excited to get started and teach you some new different ways of being quiet and listening better to your clients, and hopefully that'll help you seal the deal. If you're on, jump in the chat box, say hi. Let me know you're here so that way I can know. Let me know what you do, what's your business, what kind of brides do you guys, brides and or grooms, do you work with most often? So maybe I can tailor the webinar a little bit towards more of what you need. Today will be great, lots of learning. This morning it took me about 45 minutes and they asked a lot of questions. So take advantage of that chat to ask questions. And hey, Brandon, photo and video, perfect. So I can tailor the examples that I use based upon what it is that you guys do and what you offer. So make sure you put into the box what it is and what type of services you provide to couples in today's market. I'm excited. Talking about sales is probably my favorite topic on how to sell more, how to close more, and what that means for you in your business. Brandon, what's the biggest challenge that you find you're having when it comes to the selling process along the way? Jeff's in here too. Hey, Jeff. Elizabeth is here from Luxmore. Their venue. So welcome, Elizabeth. Let me know what kind of challenges you're having when it comes to the sales process. You're lucky, Elizabeth, because venue is what I know best. But the same things apply when it comes to sales in every avenue and every market, right? The questions are a little bit different that you ask, but the information in general is pretty much the same. So we'll go over lots of tips and options of different questions to ask. Make sure you're taking advantage of the chat box. Again, I'll email out the recorded version so everybody will have access to it. You're welcome to share with your team. Next month's webinar is scheduled and will be about reviews, the importance of client reviews, how to create a system to make it easy to remember to gather reviews, and what to do with them once you get them. Brandon, what's your closing ratio? He said about half of his couples book at the consultation, the other half do not. Some book within 2 weeks. How many of them are you losing? So out of 100%, are 80% of them that you meet with, not cold leads that just come in off the internet, the ones that you've spoken to and talked to? What's your close ratio? Because that'll make a big difference on you know, what's going on in your meetings. About 65%, that's pretty good. If you're not tracking your statistics, you really want to start doing that. We haven't started the webinar yet. I'm just chit-chatting. Anybody, make sure you use the chat box so we can create conversations and I can tailor things to what you do. So far I have photo and video here. I know I have a DJ in. We have a venue on. So make sure you let me know what you do down in the chat box so I can tailor to whatever you need. Chat here. Tailor to whatever you need. So it's just about 1 o'clock. Make sure if you've got the opportunity, you try to stay as focused as you can. Have a pen and paper. If you're multitasking, which I do all the time, keep the pen and paper on the side and keep me going on the side. Again, you'll get all the slides. So if you want to take pictures of them, share them on social media, I would love to have you do it. If it's something you don't want to have to worry about, and you can catch it on the replay, which I'll send out before the end of the day. Hey, Patty from Cake Designers. Oh, good. So I have cake and DJ and venue, a few different venue people, and photo and video. Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that we include different topics. It's 1 o'clock, and while people will still continue to jump in, I'm going to get started because I don't like to waste your guys' time. Nothing makes me crazier than when a webinar starts and it's still going and going and going, and they haven't actually started yet. So let me share over my screen so you guys can see it. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my video so you don't have to worry about looking at me. So it is only going to be the screens today. If you haven't done a webinar with me before, we go heavy on the screen and the slides, not so much you having to stare at my beautiful face. So let me turn this off. Okay, but I do still have the chat up, so if you have a question as I'm going, please make sure that you use the chat because I can follow it. So today's topic is Shut Up and Listen, Sell More by Saying Less. It is hosted by weddingvenuemap.com, a new up-and-coming website when it comes to wedding searches for brides and grooms in Central Florida. It'll list every venue. It'll be a great tool for vendors and venues. You guys can kind of start shopping for new places to go after the vendor list. Last month's topic was how to get on more vendor lists. It's up on YouTube. I will share out the link in case you missed it last month, but some different opportunities to provide for learning. So who am I? My name is Shannon Tarrant. I own and am the founder of Wedding Venue Map and the Shannon Experience. I work with vendors in the wedding industry, help vendors and venues, obviously, and help them grow their business, increase their sales, increase their marketing, set better goals, have a much clearer roadmap to their success. The goal of the webinars is really to share some of those information to get you guys some different ideas. For those who know me, the irony of me teaching a class about shut up and sell is rather amusing. We all know that I love to talk and could sit here and talk to myself for an hour, no problem. But I'm very different when it comes to the sales process with a client. It is a lot more listening, digging, asking questions, and finding out more about what they're looking for. What you'll learn today is how to improve your client meetings. Today isn't really heavily focused on getting the meeting. I can definitely do a presentation about that. Today is more focused on you've got the meeting, so how to make the meeting itself better. This includes both on the phone and online. So don't think that the same rules don't apply to phone consultations as they do in person. You'll learn poor listening versus active listening, asking questions to find their pain points, easy tips that you can start using today, how to ask for the business, and really where to start. Throughout your sales cycle, your prospects and brides and grooms will drop clues as to what they're thinking and how they're feeling. They'll talk about how they're feeling about you, your products, your services. In other words, they're really telling you what they like and what they dislike and what's important to them. This is precisely the information you need to close the sale. So if you don't pay attention, you have to work a lot harder. My goal is to teach you the ways to build that relationship so it makes closing the sale a lot easier. So why are you here? You know, I'm not the best with plants. I tend to kill everything I touch. But like a gardener, you have to have tools. You have to have the seeds and the tools and the right soil and all those pieces to make more money. So making money happens one of two ways. You can grow your profit margin, which usually means either increasing your prices or cutting expenses. And then the second is to increase your sales. Sales is the easiest way to increase your revenue by growing how much money you're making each year. How can these different behaviors really help you grow your sales? So you'll make more money. Simple. Converting leads to closed sales will make you more money. It's basic, right? You sell, they pay, life moves on. It's less stressful. A meeting full of learning about your client is way more comfortable than focusing on selling and sales itself. It also provides a really satisfying feeling. There's nothing better than closing the sale. Getting the email or them saying, yes, I'm ready to move forward. It creates this momentum to make you want to do the next one and the next one and the next one. So the goal really is to make more money, have the process be less stressful, and really up that satisfying feeling. About 7 years ago, I met Alan Berg. For those who don't know, he's a speaker and educator for Wedding Wire. He's also written an amazing book called Shut Up and Sell More. If you haven't read it, you should pick it up and read it because it's fantastic. But some of the things Alan taught me years ago was really to listen to my clients. I had just recently started at a venue, working at a venue doing sales, and the packages didn't really make sense to me. What was being offered didn't make sense. The way they were marketing the venue, I wasn't really so sure about. And he really made me focus on what it was that the clients were asking for. So you'll always know more about your products and services than your customers, but not everyone needs to hear it all. So you don't have to tell them everything. It was really about finding out what they wanted and selling to what they wanted. So I overhauled packages, pricing, because today is bride and groom. It changes all the time. What they wanted 5 years ago is not what they want today. Or maybe it is, but they want more. So it's really figuring out what they need to hear. So how do you start improving your client meetings? Become aware of your poor listening habits. We'll talk about the 4 most common things that people do. Be more curious about your clients and finding out more about them, and presenting with confidence. So these are the things that are pretty important. Guys, don't forget to use the chat box. So along the way, if you're stuck or if you have a question or something pops into your head, ask it. If I can't cover it at that moment, I'll cover it along the way. So while others are talking, which one of these are you? There's kind of 4 different categories that not great listeners fall into, and I want to know which one really applies to you. So you were preparing your next response as soon as the other party started talking. This one's like a racehorse waiting for the gate to open so you can start running. You're just waiting for your turn, and the only thing that kept you from speaking was that the other person was talking. This is a really common response. In my morning webinar, quite a few people were in that category. You were judging and evaluating what was being said. So you were judging it. Do they pick ugly colors for their wedding? Are you a florist? Are you a photographer? And she was sending you all these different pictures that she wants to recreate from Pinterest. So you're evaluating her before you've even really listened to her. So you're judging it good, bad, interesting, boring. Maybe you're distracted by their tone, their approach, the gestures they use, but either way, you stop listening. Your evaluating makes you start listening to yourself instead of to the other person. You're checked out and other things. So you've checked out and started thinking about other things. This one's rough because in the world in which we multitask, which I'm willing to bet a few of you are doing right now, it's easy to miss something that was being said when you're not active listening. So the worst part is when you jump back into the conversation and you have no idea what was just said. So this is happening more and more often when our cell phones go off and email is dinging and clients are calling, but you're really only listening for the snippets that you want to hear. It's kind of like speed reading and skimming, but for listening. Jump to conclusions rather than listen. This one is all me. Not so much anymore, but I'm still work in progress, right? We make a conclusion and stop listening. So you conclude how a feature or benefit of your product or service will help them before you've even heard all the way through. You can't wait for them to stop talking so you can impress them with your goodies and how you can solve their problem. But it requires you really listening to them. So here's a great example of that from a rental standpoint. A bride and groom are saying, well, you ask, what are they looking for? And they say, I need tables and chairs. We're getting married outside. And you go right into lighting and tents and blah, 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 and all these other things that you think she needs. The problem is you didn't let her finish, and you didn't let her tell you that she wants, they want to get married under the stars, and the tent is the weather backup, but isn't the priority. So by jumping to conclusions, you are really preventing the opportunity for you to be able to sell what their needs are. So let's talk about active listening. The active listener pays close attention to the other person's choice of words, their tone of voice, and their body language, which accounts for at least 80% of all communication. The listener takes in all these components and then repeats back to the speaker the most important points the speaker was touching on. So the active listener is really paying really good attention to things, right? They're really focused on the tone of voice and what the person says. So this is like upper level sales, but I'm going to give you the tip anyways. So I used to listen very hard for the way somebody would describe something. If I was showing pictures or talking when I was in a meeting, I would listen and try to hear them say things like, I see what you mean, or I see what you're saying, or that photo helps make sense. That means this person is more of a visual learner. But if I'm not really, really listening to capture that she said, I see what you mean, versus I hear what you're saying. If a client you're meeting with is saying things like, I hear it, like, I hear what you mean, I hear what you're saying, that means they're in audio. They're not really focused on, I could put the iPad showing pictures away because I need to do more vocal describing than visualizing and showing them. It's challenging when you have two different people in a meeting though, and one's one and one's the other, so you have to do both. But if you're not doing some serious active listening and paying attention to their choice of words and how their body language is and their tone, you can't really pick up on those things. But the listener is taking all of those, points, and how you react to them is really important. So paraphrasing what they say is a really easy tip to show active listening. So if a couple is telling you that it's really important for us to get, pictures before the ceremony starts and, to do a first look. So what you're saying is you want to make sure you have enough time to get the important photos. Paraphrase it back to them. Nodding, making eye contact, all of those things show the client that you are participating in active listening. One of my favorite things that if you know me well enough and know how I sell, you can see that I do it. But if you don't know, I'm pretty subtle with it. It's called matching and mirroring. And what that means is you're talking in the body language of the client. You're paying attention to if they are leaning back in their chair, you lean back in your chair. If they cross their leg, you cross their leg. Obviously, you don't want to look like a creeper, right? And you don't want to do it within the same moment that they do it. But if, I have a couple who's really excited and they can't wait to talk about their wedding planning, then I'm going to have the same inflection, the same tone of voice, the same volume, even my word choice. I'm going to repeat back the words that they use. But if they're quiet and calm and they're not really sure about what they're looking for, then I'm going to talk the same way. So making sure that you match and mirror them, it's a subconscious way to make the person you're speaking with feel more comfortable with you. They can almost see themselves in you as they're sitting there and talking. This is a great quote. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be using them in that proportion. This is really key. You should be listening twice as much as you're speaking in your meetings with your clients. Traditional sales is very present. But new age sales and working with millennials is really focusing on letting them share. Anything you can present to them, you can ask in a question. So how do you do that better? What does be more curious about your clients mean? So it's important for you to find out what they really want. Focus your energy on learning about your client. What's frustrating them? What do they need, to help make it a great wedding? What do they like? What do they dislike? It's asking a lot of questions. Those questions will provide you with information to actually make the sales process easier. Try and put yourself in their shoes. This is a big one. I'm not sure about you guys, but before I got into the wedding industry, I am not sure I could have answered most of the questions. And if I was a bride calling all these venues and really seeing how frustrating the process is and calling 10 DJs and all the prices are different and all the packages include something different, and every person tells me I need something different. DJ 1 tells me I need 20 uplights. DJ 2 tells me I don't. Cake designer 1 tells me you have to have a cake stand because your cake will look terrible just on the table. Designer 2 says you don't really need a cake stand. The cake is beautiful on its own. So they don't really know who to trust with this. So you have to remember to put yourself in their shoes and remember what it's like. only really recommending something that you know that will help them and will solve a need. Then you become someone that they can trust. Very few people enjoy being sold to, yet we all love buying stuff. This is why the internet has become, Christmas shopping. I think now the statistics, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure this year online sales surpassed in-store sales. You want to know why? Because I don't want to be sold. I don't need somebody. I will go into a furniture store. The first thing out of my mouth when the salesperson comes up to me is, I'm just looking. I'll go sit on the couch I like, and then I just want to buy it. I don't want you to sell me more. I would rather just go home, order it, and pay for delivery off the internet than have somebody sell to me. So no one really likes to be sold, but we all love to buy. And when you fulfill a need, you want to make sure that the process of what you're doing is the way they want to purchase it. When you're asking questions to clients, you need to ask open-ended questions to elicit more information and specific questions to clarify that you understand what they're saying. But really, what's the point, right? What's the point in asking all the questions and really getting to know your people? Unless your prospect or bride or groom has a need to solve, they're not going to buy what you have to offer. Their need is what's called pain. So you have to fulfill something. It's harder for some categories than other. No one's really getting married without a photographer. But for video, they might not have the pain of a video. So you have to either create the pain, and make sure that they realize they're going to be missing those memories. But for a lot of categories in the wedding industry, the need exists for the category, but how do you create a need for yourself? And it's finding out what they're looking for and finding out their specific pain. It's so easy to just go through the 100 talk points that you've said. Every time you meet with a client, you say the same thing, you go through the same stuff. I know this because after doing 5 tours a week every Saturday, by the 5th tour, when I was in a spot where I was just saying the same thing I said every time, I was saying the same words on the same step, like literally as I walked through the property. I got rid of that and started just engaging the customer. We just started talking about what are their challenges and what are they looking for and what's the dream look like instead of selling, and all of a sudden our numbers went up huge. Brides and grooms don't always know what they need, but they know what they're trying to avoid or prevent. If you haven't established trust and if you haven't established that rapport with them, telling them what they need is like shoving information down their throat. You're either scaring them and having them be like, oh my God, do I really need this? Or, you're educating them. But if you have to establish the trust first and make sure that the information you're telling them is something that whether you've convinced them they need it or they've come in needing it on their own, that you've gotten to that point of the process before you start presenting. So it's really important to find the pain. So you've got to ask questions that help you get to their pain point. Solving pain is why people buy. So how can you help them? The easiest question after we first met and we chit chat was, tell me, how's wedding planning going? So simple, right? How is wedding planning going? I either love it or I hate it. This is really fun or it's exhausting. I don't really have time for this, or I am a stay-at-home and I have all the time in the world. But even that, you're staying at home usually if you're a mom. But asking that one question, tell me how wedding planning is going, it really defines the entire conversation. I also used to like to ask, are we the first in the category? So am I the first DJ you've met with, or the first cake company you've met with, or have you met with others? This can tell me a lot. It can tell me, for the bride who says, well, I've toured 23 venues, or I've met with 7 other DJs, it's almost like, let's just not even worry about what I offer. What are you not finding that you're looking for? I would actually say that to them. I'm not like pretending. These are the things I would say. Like, so you've spoken with and met with 4 other photographers and you're still having meetings. So what is it that you're not finding? Because that's the pain point, right? Sometimes it's budget, sometimes it's what's included, sometimes it's that connection. But finding some question to open your door is really important. When you ask questions to brides and grooms, make sure that you're not asking yes or no questions. You need to focus on using the words tell me, like tell me how wedding planning is going. or how or why. Sometimes just the word why. When they would say, oh, I've toured 27 venues and now we're here, it's been a little bit stressful. And I'm like, why? I just say one word. And it makes them, it keeps going, it keeps them elaborating and explaining, and it keeps them talking. Remember, 2 times as much listening as to talking. So find ways to word your questions. Tell me how, why, what has been the easiest part of planning, what's been the most challenging, why is that so important to you? So if somebody says, hey, you know, it's really important for me to have a 7-tier wedding cake and I only have 75 guests, why is that important to you? Instead of saying that's not necessary, you don't really need that much cake, before you try to talk her out of something, find out why that's so important to them, because that'll make all the difference. So get more specific and make your questions open-ended. Throw in the chat box what's your favorite open-ended question to ask, or one that you're willing to try. Always remember, the meeting isn't about you. It literally isn't about you. It's not about the products you offer, the services you offer, any of that. It's about if you can fulfill their needs. So you've got to start by finding out what their needs are. And if you haven't done that, then you're just talking, and that's fine. I'm not saying that the old way of sales doesn't work. It does work for sure. But the world is changing, and millennials are changing the name of the game. And if weddings is your bread and butter, the generations are getting younger and younger and younger. Old school sales techniques, they just aren't working. And what works in person definitely doesn't always work on the phone, because you don't have the opportunity to look at their body language, react to them the way you did before. So just remember, it's not about you. So here are some easy tips to make your meetings improve. Slow the conversation down. Slow it down. Articulate your thoughts at a digestible speed. Make it slow. We talk fast, right? We're all in the industry. It's making sure that they really understand it and you're going at their pace. Make sure you pause just in case they need clarification. I would say a lot of, does that make sense? Ask questions to help guide and shape what they share. And going slow by throwing questions in, it stops you from just continuously talking. Don't interrupt. Not only is interrupting rude, but it means you'll miss out on something they would have said if you'd given them the chance. So the tent example that we talked about before is a great example. You know, if you cut them off. So one of my first clients, when I first started consulting, one of the services that I offer is to observe a sales meeting. So I sat in a separate room, you know, where the client couldn't see me, but I was listening to them and really just sat down and evaluated how the meeting was going. Well, the client interrupted the bride and groom 4 times. 4 in the course of an hour. Like, completely talked over them and stopped them from talking. So, and had no idea that they were doing that. And from the client standpoint, I could hear the change in their tone each time she did it. So it's important to make sure that you don't do that and you really just sit and listen. I struggle with this too, so sometimes I actually sit and put my hand over my mouth so that I can make sure that I'm listening and not talking. Listen to their emotions. So feel out their tone of voice and their stress level. Is this a fun process or not a fun process for them? Learn how to recognize the volume, speed, and the tone of people's voices really can indicate how they're feeling. On every call or meeting, make it a goal to think about what that person might be thinking behind their words. So really start to listen for the emotion in their voices. Clarify and paraphrase. I use this one all the time. Paraphrase their thoughts in your own words to show that you care about what they're saying and make sure that you understood them. Sometimes when somebody was asking for something and I would ask why, and if I repeated it back, so what you're saying is blah, 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 I didn't always have it right. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry I got that confused. Let's try it again. So tell me why that's important to you. So make sure that it shows active listening when you're paraphrasing back. It shows that you're paying attention. But make sure that you're using that technique. Even at one point, just try these somewhere within the repeating things back to them in a way that shows them that you're listening to them. Position yourself as an expert. This is huge because you have to be really careful to do it in a helpful way that fulfills their needs, not showcasing how smart you are and how much you know. See, they want to be led down the path of that you're an expert, but telling them what they need and not letting them figure it out for themselves, it doesn't always work with this new generation. I have been very blessed to work for some wonderful bosses in my career. But for a lot of them, they were older men. And I used to joke around and say that I would plant seeds. I knew what we needed to do. But me telling them, this is what we need to do for the marketing plan, blah, 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 they'd be like, okay, whatever, Shannon. And we'll talk about it later. But sometimes I would just plant the seed and say, hey, I saw this cool thing. I wonder if maybe that's something we should try sometime. And then I'd walk away and let it be. So that they would come back and say to me, oh, hey, you know what we should try? And then I'd giggle and be like, oh, yeah, we should try that. You need to kind of do the same thing when it comes to your clients. You need to like plant the seed of an idea so that it comes back to you from like it was their idea. I know this gets really frustrating for those of us who've been doing this a long time in our industry because you want to just tell them this is what you need. But millennials don't always deal well with that, authority coming at them. They want things to be their idea. So finding ways to make suggestions or ask the question, so asking them, so what do you think we should do, or what do you think it would look like if ABC? So let's do photography, for example. They say they want to take all these 7,000 photos they found on Pinterest. And instead of saying, no, there isn't time for that, it's, well, how long do you think it takes us to like get in and pose each picture, to really do a photo like this? Because it's pretty posed, right? And they're like, yeah, and it's, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, that's probably about right. Even if it's not, just tell them that they're right. It makes them feel good. And then, so how much time do we really have in between that ceremony and reception to focus on getting some of these shots? And they're like, well, it's only an hour. Well, how many photos do you think we'd be able to get if we were focusing that much time on each photo? And then they start doing the math and they're like, oh, well, only like 20 pictures. They're like, yeah, I mean, and they're like, oh, I probably want to make sure I get all my family. It's like you talked them into it being their idea. So you keep asking the questions to walk them down the path instead of just telling them no. And that for them is like, oh, she does know what she's talking about, or he does know what he's talking about, because you made me understand it on my terms instead of you just telling me what I have to have or what I need. Another great way to position yourself as an expert is to connect your brides and grooms with other vendors. So at the venue that I worked at, we were different than most properties because we did not have a set vendor list. We didn't say, here's a list of people we like to work with. And the real reason for that was, our vendors that we had great partnerships with, we didn't want to waste their time. Like, I didn't want a bride who has a really tight budget and doesn't really care about the DJ, like their people don't dance, they just want music playing in the background. I'm not going to send them those DJs that are going to be on the higher end of the budget. We're going to send her some different options. The groom who says, I don't want, or I want a naked cake. We want one of those cakes that doesn't have, well, I know everyone can do them, but there are some people, when they jump on their website, they're going to see naked cake after naked cake after naked cake. And they're going to be like, oh, she sent me to the right person. So connecting people with once you understand your bride and grooms, their goals and their challenges, you can bring them together with other vendors, to help fulfill those. So if they're asking for something that you don't offer, refer them out. Those introductions have nothing to do with your products or services, but they establish you as someone looking out for their best interest. And that creates you that bonding and that rapport for them. The last up of these tips is to remember the anecdotes. So if you remember and you give them that opportunity and you're really doing this right, where you're listening more than you're talking, and you're bonding and chit-chatting with them more and finding out really what they need, along the lines of that conversation is going to be little stories and things they share. I did a bride and groom meeting for a client last week, and The groom must have said that he was Irish like 25 times. I mean, that he's Irish and we drank, and he's Irish and we drank. Over and over and over, he kept bringing it up. So in the follow-up email, I made sure to touch on it. Like, I connected. I'm Irish. My family's a bunch of, fun, loud. People in the family Irish step dance. We like to listen to Irish music. St. Patty's Day is like Christmas in my family. So for me, like, I made the connection with them, but that piece and those anecdotes and those stories that they share with you in the meeting or on the phone, you have to really listen for them and then use them as a part of your follow-up. Acknowledging those references helps build rapport with them. It's these little teeny tiny things. They could tell you a story about their child. They could, or they have kids, or ask, how did you meet? Or how did you get engaged? Or if you're a florist, what's the first flower he gave you for your anniversary? I mean, find out those anecdotes and write them down. So that way you can use them as part of your sales process because it shows that you were listening. It shows that you were connecting. So these are the easy tips to do. A few other big guys, and I'll run through these quick so you don't waste too much time. Lose the jargon. The easiest example of this is rental companies. We all know those white padded folding chairs are called resin chairs, right? Do you think a bride and groom know what the word resin is? I didn't. For the first few times I saw it, one of my clients is a venue and it was in their packet, white resin chairs. I said, how many times do they ask you what that means? She said, all the time. I'm like, get rid of the jargon. Don't use words about specific technology and things like they may not know it's called a naked cake, a cake with no like frosting on the outside. I don't even know how to really explain it with no frosting on the outside, I guess. They may not know what, when you start talking video and you're like, our photo and our cameras are this and this and this with the lens and this. They don't have any idea what you're talking about. So selling is about having a good conversation. And talk to them the way you would your family or your friends and just telling them about what you do. Don't complicate the process. Keep it as simple as possible. Florists are usually the worst offenders of this because they start talking flower types and brides and grooms have no idea. I just went with my friend to a florist and she said the word delphinium and my friend looked like she was going to cry. I'm like, they're blue and they hang like little bluebells. She was like, oh, okay. So simple, but don't use jargon that they don't really understand and you assume they know. Respect your client's time. Make sure that the timing is right. If your meetings take an hour, if they take 2 hours, however long your tours take, or the phone call is going to be, make sure you tell them in advance. If you can hear into the start of a phone call or on a meeting that it's rushed, confirm again as you start it. So do we still have an hour for this call? Or do you still have an hour and a half to meet? So that way you know right then and there if you've got the time. Obviously, if you can reschedule, you can reschedule. But, I mean, if someone has come out to meet you and they're like, no, I don't really have the hour. I only have 45 minutes. You got to change it up to get what you can done. So make sure you're respecting their time. I know it gets frustrating because they don't always respect our time. They're late all the time. They're the one buying. We're the one selling. So we're really on their schedule, unfortunately. But doesn't mean you get to be disrespectful of their time. Keep it really simple. Don't ramble on and on about things that have no relation to anything that they've said. Easy example, when I used to tour at Mission Inn, obviously it's an amazing golf resort. One of the questions I always asked is, are you guys into golf? Or are your friends and family into golf? If they said no, I said me neither. Like, golf isn't really my bag. What about shooting guns or hanging out at the spa all day? And that would get a different reaction. But if golf was what they were interested in, I would tell them all the features and the benefits of golf out at the resort I worked at. But I kept it simple. If they don't care about golf, I'm not going to talk about golf. If they don't care about lighting or they don't care about, albums at this stage of the process when you're trying to sign them, don't talk about things they don't really care about. Pick a few things that will help them. Focus on the benefits on how your product or service will help them. Having listened, if you've listened to them well, by the time you're presenting, you should have a good understanding of their needs in relation to your project and to your product or service. Presenting with confidence. So you've done all this work, right? You've listened to them, asked all these questions. It's time to present. Present the solution based upon what they've shared is their pain. Don't present them things that they're not interested in or doesn't solve their problem. You've invested time, right, at this point, understanding what their needs are. You, in your head, know what their solutions are, but your solutions have to reflect their needs. You should only be recommending things that bring value to them, which could save them time, money, or make wedding day go a lot more smoothly. So make sure that when you get to that presentation point, but all this bonding and questioning should really go, and making sure that you guys are on the same page should happen before you start the presentation process. Ask for the business. So this is a huge one. It sounds silly, but in a recent survey, 7 out of 10 salespeople didn't ask for the business. They got all the way through their meeting and they never asked for it. So sales are about great conversations and making decisions. You build all these relationships and you create trust. After all this hard work, you need to know if you're going to be working together. So find the closing technique that works for you and ask for the business. Don't leave it hanging. Make sure that you get to that point to say, have the whatever that one sentence looks like to you. So are you guys interested in moving forward? You don't have to say, here's the contract, but, the next steps, would you like to find out more about the next steps of the process? And if they're like, no, then you probably lost them somewhere. And you can either circle back, but if you don't ever ask for the business when you've got them captivated, and talking with you and meeting with you, then now you're trying to ask for the business by email. That doesn't really work, guys. So make sure that you are finding whatever works for you to ask for that piece of the pie. Make sure you always discuss the next steps. So you summarize the meeting, but you have to agree at the end as to what you're going to do and what they have to do, and what's the date and the time when that's going to happen, within what window of time. So if they, some people say, oh, don't let them think it over. They should close today. I don't believe in that. I don't buy like that. I like to think about it. I mean, if you've done a really good job, but I may not be the final decision maker. I may be the one you're talking to, but, my fiance wasn't available today. Or, I ate your cake and I really like it, but, my mom's the one paying for it. So I have to review the quote with her. So you can't just say close now or, never close, but you have to agree to what do the next steps look like. So it's a good technique to use with clients is that scale of 1 to 10. So as you're closing, I do it at the end of every meeting, including a lot of new consulting clients. So it works for anything, but on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you have no interest in the service, the products, or whatever, based upon our conversation today, or 10 being you're so excited to move forward, you're ready to just give me all your money. Where are you at? I mean, I obviously say it with a different tone, and it's a little bit softer than I'm saying to you guys, but that 1 to 10 tells you a ton, right? If she replies and says a 3, I'm like, oh, a 3? Like, that sounds like we're not really the right fit for you. So tell me why you think that. Again, tell me why you feel that way. So I can get an idea of really if we're not the right fit. Because guess what? Potentially, if she's a 3 and I know we're not the right fit based on what she tells me, we're done. I don't have to chase her. I'm not writing proposals and sending proposals and having them sit there. I'm not chasing her to go to contract. I'm like, well, then what can I do to help you? If I'm not the right fit, how can I refer you to someone who is? What is it that you're looking for that I don't offer? And let them tell you, because maybe you're not the right fit for them, and that's okay too. But you have to know. But on the same token, if she comes back and says she's a 7 or an 8, then I'm going to say, woo, we're already an 8. That's awesome. What do you need to go from an 8 to a 10? This is such the best technique. If you only write this one down, the 1 to 10 is the best thing you could possibly do. She'll then tell me, bride or groom, whoever I'm meeting with, will then tell me what I missed in the meeting. Like I didn't tell them enough about something. Well, I'm just not sure about the backup plan if I'm a venue. Or I'm not really sure if I really need the lighting, and I don't know if I want that in the package if you're a DJ. Well, now you can show her another option. Or I need to talk to my mom or my fiance. I need to recheck the budget. It's a little bit over where I want it to be. That, wherever they're at in the window, sometimes they're like, I'm a 10, let's move forward. And you haven't even asked for the business yet. So making sure that you have a clear future as to what's next is, and whether it's, I'm going to send you the proposal on Monday, you know, or I'll send you the proposal this afternoon, including the questions to move forward to contract, or I'll send you the contract, whatever your process looks like. Make sure that you're clear with what you're doing, but you also set an expectation and help them set the expectation as to what you should expect from them. So I'm going to send this information over. When can I expect to hear from you? Hold them accountable for, you know, their portion and their part of this, because it's a two-way street. If you've built really good rapport, then this really shouldn't be an issue. Sell the problem you can solve, not the product or service you provide. So I'm going to take a 10-second hold. If you guys have questions, because we're coming near the end of the presentation itself, so if you have questions based upon what I've said so far, make sure you pop them into the chat box. Otherwise, I'll let you go early. So if you have, there's somewhere you're stuck in the sales process, people are ghosting you, blah, 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 just let me know. And if I haven't touched on it, I'll make sure I go back and touch on it. But selling the problem you can solve, not the product or service you provide. Most people are selling features. They'll tell you all the great things they have. For a photographer, we do 8 hours and blah, 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 and here's my camera, and you'll get these pretty pictures, and here's a beautiful album, and all these great things, right? But what most people aren't selling is the benefit of what they provide. So I'll give you the easiest example I can think of. When I was driving to the property I used to work at, I lived in Altamont, was driving a highway in the hills. It was very far. I had an SUV. A month later, I was ready to get rid of the SUV because the gas was costing me a fortune. I loved my car. There was nothing wrong with my Ford. It was a great vehicle, but I just didn't want to spend the money anymore. So when I went out shopping for cars, I was really looking to save money. And which meant for me, I didn't really even care if the car payment went up a little bit at the time, because I had one already. It was about saving money in the gas tank. Well, I kept going from car dealership to car dealership, and they were going on and on about 48 miles to the gallon, and this to this, and this to this. And finally, I end up at Toyota, and I get this like 19-year-old sales guy. He looked just like Justin Bieber, the exact old Bieb haircut. And he started running math and said, what are you getting miles to the gallon right now? Well, how far do you drive? And he says to me, do you know that you could save $450 a month if you drove a Prius instead of the car you drive? That's the benefit. He stopped talking about features. He didn't tell me. I still, now I know how many miles to the gallon my car gets. But at the time that I was buying, I had no idea that, you know, I was going to get 50 miles to the gallon, 50 to 60, or 45 to 55, depending upon, you know, how I drive and where I'm going. All I knew was that I could save $450 a month. Now that's a benefit. So what you need to do for your own business is you need to sit down and make a list of all of your features, all the new shinies, and all the wonderful things that you can say that you offer, services, products that you provide. But then in the column next to each one of those, you need to write what the benefits are. So the feature of a Prius is you get 50 miles to the gallon. The benefit is that you save money in your gas tank, which I can then go spend on other things. So make a features and benefits list for your business. Solving the problem is selling the benefit. It's no stress. You don't have to worry about us not showing up. So a great feature for a DJ who's been in business a really long time is that we have, you know, 25 years experience. We've done 1,000 weddings. Well, that's great. But the benefit is that, like, the longevity of our business is that, you know, we're going to be there. You don't have to worry that we're not going to be there on wedding day. You know, we have thousands of positive reviews. You know, the benefit is that, you know, your day is going to be successful. So go through and make a list of all your features and all your benefits, and make sure that what you're selling on your website, when you're talking to people, is you're selling the problem and that you can solve, and you're selling the benefit, not the product or the service, because that's what everyone else does. I mean, you can do it, but everybody else is doing the same thing. Listening equals more sales. More sales equals more money. The ability to help your customers, which at the end of the day will get you better reviews, which by the way is next month's topic, is how to get better reviews, creating systems for it, and what to do with them once you get them. But more sales is motivation to keep selling. Like you can keep going and keep whipping through and making more money, and that always makes everybody happy, right? So where are you going to start? Whatever you use for client meetings, like whatever sheet or notes where you take paper on, put in a little section called PP and have it be the pain points. These are things that are going to be their deciding factor when it comes to deciding on your goods or services. So when I was doing that client meeting for a venue a few weeks ago for the groom, he's toured it, all these other venues, and all he wants is Tito's vodka, literally. When I was like, what is the most important thing to you that you aren't finding? And he was like, no one carries Tito's vodka. And I like started laughing. Like that was his pain point, was Tito's vodka. And I said, so if I tell you I'm within the right price and I can offer what you're looking for and whatever, and I tell you I have Tito's vodka, you're going to book here. He was like, for sure. So simple, right? But you have to ask the right questions to find the pain point. So put that on whatever your client meeting sheet is before you print the next one. Record your next meeting on audio and listen to it afterwards. This is hard, right? Because you do like an hour-long meeting, who wants to listen to themselves for an hour? Well, you don't have to listen to the whole thing, even though you should, because you should make sure that you're doing all the things we talked about, asking for the sale, not interrupting, really active listening, repeating back to them what you've said, what they've said. But you need to listen and hear who's doing the most talking. Like, is it you or is it them? And if it's you, you need to find ways to take information you would have told them and twist it and turn it into a question. You need to focus more on connecting with their needs and less on selling your product. So when I did tours working at a venue, and the assistants or interns or new people we would hire would come on tours with me, and even now when I work with clients who work at venues, they're like, you didn't even talk about the venue. I said, well, no, it's not about the venue. It's about the couple and about what they're looking for. And I might not even be the right fit. So what's the point in telling them all the wonderful things about the venue if they don't really care about that? So focus on connecting with their needs and less on selling your product and selling your service. And you have to change your sales process. I mean, it's not supposed to be easy, because if you've been doing it the old way for a really long time, it's not going to happen overnight. Just find little things here and there that you can try to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. If you're not getting our email newsletters, make sure you sign up. This is the URL that you can go to that'll sign you right up for it. You'll find out about upcoming webinars. Like I said, next month's webinar is about customer reviews, the gift that keeps on giving. WeddingVenueMap.com will be launching within the next 2 months. There's collaboration opportunities. I am looking for blogs. So on the new website, we'll have really helpful tips and information for brides and grooms planning their wedding. And at this point, I'm willing to share any blogs that people send me. And they're not sponsored, so they're completely free. So if you have something that's helpful tips, obviously you want it to showcase your service, but it's got to have some photos, have enough words to it. But if you're interested in blogging for WeddingVenueMap.com for the launch, just let me know and I can send you over what we're looking for. And I can even help you come up with some ideas. But make sure you stay in touch, and hopefully you'll join us on our next webinar, Customer Reviews, the Gift That Keeps on Giving. It is on Monday the 23rd. This is the first one that we'll be charging for. It's only $5 a person. Advertisers on Wedding Venue Map, Perfect Wedding Guide advertisers, and Central Florida Wedding Association members will be free. So we'll send out the coupon codes for those different groups for them to share with their advertisers. But for everyone else, it'll be $5. So it's small. $5 is the early bird price, $10 once you get within a week. But hopefully you'll come and join us next month, and you'll realize that I try to give as much information away as I can to make it worth the $5 or $10 for the next, for the monthly webinars. Advertisers on WeddingVenueMap.com will always be free and have access to go back and watch them afterwards. So if you guys have any questions, we still have about 12 minutes left. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop into the chat box and share what your questions are. Tell me your best takeaway as to what you got out of it. Pop the video back on and stop sharing this beautiful screen, so that way you don't have to see it anymore. and let me know what you learned or what the questions are, and see what we can do to help you guys make more money this year. Does anybody have any questions? I'll let it go for about another minute or so, and see. Make sure you're following up with your people afterwards, and if you set a clear future, it'll be a lot easier to do. So I will be at the CFWA meeting this month, as well as the Perfect Wedding Guide Luncheon over at Owlsworth. So if you're around and you see me, say hey and reach out. But if not, if you've got topics or any other questions, you can always email me at hello@weddingvenumap.com. And I'm happy to share or happy to help however I can. But if you guys don't have anything else, tips for upselling. Okay, Brittany, you caught me just in time. Upselling is a great opportunity. So it all depends on what you do and what services you provide. Brittany, tell me a little bit more about what you do, and I can be specific to your category. But a lot of times when you're on the front side and clients are having a little bit of sticker shock, maybe, right? They're not sure how much it was going to cost for the services you provide, and they're like having a little bit of a heart attack. I used to plant the seeds of options, but I didn't always try to get them to do it on the front end. So one of the great opportunities for upselling is to plant a seed and tell them these are options, but the goal is to get them signed. Once you get them in the door and they're a client, you know they're trusting you. They're investing in you, in your company, in your business, in your time. Spa sales manager. Most of the time I have clients sticker shock and wanting to do a food and beverage event. Okay, so spa sales. Gotcha. Ooh, I actually ran a spa for a little while, so I can help. So the upsell is getting information in front of them. So if you're doing a spa, when I ran a spa, in the waiting rooms, we used to put all these menus out that offered, and it almost looked like a restaurant menu. Like they'd pick it up and be like, what is this? And they opened it up and one side was facials and one side was massages. And so it was getting the information in front of the customer so that they could read what the options were. But we stopped talking features and started talking benefits. What is this upsell going to do for me? Why should I want to add food to my spa party? Or so making sure that you're getting the information. A few of the local, I see somebody on from Orlando Wedding and Party Rentals. So they do a really good job with this, because I get these e-blasts of like, hey, did you know we have fancy bathrooms? Hey, did you know we have these things? And I'm like, no, I did not know that you had that. So sometimes it's just sharing information, but I suggestive sell on the front end, but I don't push it to force it into the contract. I try to open the door with it. And Amy and Brittany, hey ladies, keep up the good work with the e-blast, because it's always good to share the info. So let's say a client is already booked. It's obviously easier to upsell. You just want to present them what are the benefits from it, and catch them at the right moment. Just remember to keep touching them with opportunities and options, because they may not be ready the first time you send it. If somebody books a facial on the front end, when I'm booking the facial and I know how much it's going to cost already, which in most spas it's not cheap, right? Because if it's a good one. So I already know it's like, oh my God, this isn't what, at that point I know I'm already investing in X. But once I'm there, this sounds terrible that I'm actually going to say this, but I'm going to say it. At the last 45 days of people planning a wedding, they're hemorrhaging money. Right? They're paying the DJ, the caterer, the venue, the this, the that, whatever. The 60 to 45 day window is the perfect time to upsell, because at this point it's like, whatever, what's another $500? And that sounds terrible, but it's true. So it's keep plugging, keep trying. At the perfect moment, you don't know when that's going to be for them. And sticker shock is normal. I would sit down with couples trying to sell a venue, and I just hit you with a $32,000 bill. You want to see the look on their faces when you say $32,000? It's not as bad as when you're talking about a little bit less. So, so finding the right time to upsell, making sure you're offering them the opportunities, get them signed, and then worry about adding things on. From Patty, I have brides that want to have the most of the cake dummy cakes to make it look larger, but they seem to have the impression that cake decorators make these cakes for free. How do you let them know they're not free without hurting their feelings? Oh, so maybe you write a blog, or maybe that's part of your emailing, that the cost of the cake is, it's not just eggs and flour and sugar. It's the cost of the time of decorating a cake is what makes like a wedding cake more expensive than a sheet cake that they would put in the kitchen. The dummy cake idea, I don't even get where it came from. Like all that time and effort that goes into decorating, but they don't get it. They think that it's just fake. It's just styrofoam. Well, sometimes the styrofoam is more expensive than the eggs and the flour, sugar, and the vanilla. So it doesn't really make any sense. But again, you got to put yourself in their shoes, and they have no idea what they're talking about, right? They just saw some article online that says you should get a dummy cake because that'll be less. And if it's a bride looking for that and she wants a big cake, you know, you price it the way you can, but it's not going to be free. And it's not, listen, if you're looking for me to just take a fake cake from my shelf and put it out in your cake, it's a different ballgame. But actually decorating it to what your style is, it's just explaining and educating. It's not about hurting their feelings. It's just kind of saying the time and effort that goes into it, that it's not, that's what I used to tell my friends. It's not the flour and the sugar and the eggs that you're paying for. I mean, it is, that's a portion of it, but it's the time and energy and effort. Ooh, Martha Stewart. She got you good, I guess. But I don't know, maybe the cake baker she works with says it's a great idea and they prefer to do it that way and do sheet cakes in the back. But maybe those people are selling pre-decorated cakes. So just make sure you're educating. If it's a question that you get over and over and over again, put it into your sales process, put it into your emails, put it into a frequently asked questions on your website so that when somebody asks you, you can just send them the link for it and maybe show the difference in between, you know, a regular wedding cake and how much time and how much effort and what the price was versus on the other side as to what the dummy cake would look like. Brittany, when you get a lot of emails, when do you decide to have a phone conversation meeting in person and prioritize which ones would be the most beneficial? For example, we get quotes for rentals and it's overwhelming to have phone calls and meetings with every client who may or may not book. That's an interesting question because you guys get a lot of online quotes, right? People who just kind of go through. And so the question is, how do you qualify them better? So they fill out the online form and say, I'm looking for, and they're actually already getting the pricing. So maybe it's after the quote. They get the quote that has the pricing, and a part of the quote is, you know, let's schedule a time to review the quote and sign your contract. So it's like two pieces together, like let's talk and sign. So they know that we're having a conversation to sign a contract, to like finalize it, or to review the options. I'm sure that it's different, right? Because you guys are big quoting online a lot more. So it's definitely a different option. And maybe it's a divide and conquer. Maybe it's, you know, you decide who, or somebody in the office just takes some of those calls. If it's under 500, it just goes right to contract. If it's over, I don't know. That's a really good question. Sometimes we can upsell them before we quote, and a lot of times they don't know what they want until we speak to them. So in one question, you're telling me you don't want to waste your time talking to people, and to prioritize them. And in the second, you're upselling them. So then that means everybody's worth the conversation. Don't get mad at me. But that means you need to talk to all of them, as many of them as you possibly can. So one of the things you might want to do is look at an online scheduling software, something like Acuity, or I don't know, there's other ones out there where it's, let's schedule a 15-minute call. And they can schedule just a quick chat to review your quote and go over all the options and see if you're ready to move forward. So that there's no intent that it's going to be an hour long. It's just a quick conversation. So that might help. But honestly, there is no way to prioritize them. You can prioritize them by how much money they're potentially spending, but maybe they say they need tables and chairs, and then they realize they need tables, chairs, dance floor, basic tablecloths, tent, and lights, and they haven't quoted that. So, I mean, you're never going to know. It's like working leads. You never know which lead is the lead that's going to have $100,000 budget, but when she filled out the form on your website, she says she only has less than $60 a person. So, you know, you don't know which leads are the chase and they're going to disappear and ghost you versus the ones who are going to reply. I feel like if they get the quote or, you know, they schedule that 5 to 10 minutes to talk to you, they're actually interested enough to have a conversation versus just whip off a quote online. I'm happy to give you pricing, but you're probably not even going to understand what it all means if you don't talk to me. So, well, we are out of time. I don't see any more questions, and I don't want to keep everybody in here. So thank you guys so much for coming and staying. I will email out probably later tonight the link to this so that you have it. And if you need any help, you just let me know, and I'm happy to help you. Talk to you soon, and hopefully I get to see you on next month's webinar. Have a great day.